Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro Bodybuilder. Today's guest is Vinny Galanti. Vinny, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. So Vinny, we're just going to jump right into things. I've got 4 questions I like to ask all of my guests. The first question that I have for you, kind of as the warm-up questions. How do you start your day? Do you have a specific routine or ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
You know, every morning, this sounds so simple. I like to just get up and take my time, have a cup of coffee, go on the internet, search, a few training videos. Every day lately, since I've gotten back into competing, no joke, before my feet hit the floor, I'm pretty excited about what I'm going to train that day. So right from the get-go, I just get up and have my coffee, get online, whatever body part I'm going to train that day. I go online. John Meadows is a big fan. I'm a big fan of John Meadows. And I just research him and Brandon Ray and guys like that. And, I have my own style of training, but I always feel like there's so much to learn. Even after 38 years of training, I still like to enjoy learning, and I've never enjoyed it as much as I'm enjoying it now.
Perfect. So we're going to just transition into the second question here as a part of the warm-up questions, Vinny. Do you have a favorite quote, mantra, or word? And I kind of like to preface this. There's different seasons of life. So kind of however you want to take this, it can be a favorite quote, mantra, or word from maybe a previous season of life. Maybe it's something presently. Again, just whatever direction you want to take it. Favorite quote, mantra, or word. And if there's more than one, please feel free to share.
I as I've gotten older, I've learned to take things a little slower and to relax. And if there's one word that comes to mind, it's whenever I'm in doubt, and it sounds really silly and really simple, but whenever I'm in doubt, whenever I'm questioning anything, I use the word yes. I just say yes out loud. And then I go into, I'm a faithful guy, and I just go into prayer. I reflect and take a moment to take a step back, and and it comes, and whatever it is, it comes to me. And if it doesn't come to me, I don't force it. That's really it. I mean, I don't force things anymore.
For sure. Now, I want you to expound on that a little bit in terms of because I know that's from experience, and that's words of wisdom in terms of I don't force things anymore. What does that kind of mean to you specifically when you say I don't force things anymore, Vinny?
In the past, I think when I was younger, as a younger guy with any aspect of life, I would just dive into stuff and not think as much as I think today. Like I don't want to say I think too much or I overthink. I put a better emphasis on what I'm looking to do in this. I guess what I'm trying to say is I take the time to dive into anything that I do. I research, I plan, I kind of like, if it's falling into place, awesome. If I have to force it, I walk away from it. I don't force things anymore. If I'm going to prep for a contest, like earlier this year, I wanted to do the New York Pro, and life didn't go the way everybody wanted it to go last year, right? Plans were changed because of COVID. And after winning the Masters Pittsburgh Pro in 19, the plan was to do the New York Pro in New York. But the world had a different plan for everybody, and New York Pro was in Tampa. It didn't feel right. So I chose to go another direction, have a better off season. That felt right for me. And now the New York Pro wasn't in New York. And at 54, I wanted to do one more show, another 212 show. But because it wasn't in New York, it just didn't feel right again. And I didn't force it. So I said, you know what? Let me continue my off season. And then it just clicked and everything fell into place for the shows that I'm training for now. If that makes any sense.
Love it. It definitely makes sense. And that's why I wanted to expound on it, because I know that statement is from years of experience, right? So that definitely makes sense. And I appreciate you.
It also goes into on my business side with my personal training. The location that I'm in now, it just makes sense. It's all falling into place. All the guys I train, business is picking up. I'm busy. I have more clients than I've had in a long time. I got a lot of guys competing in shows, and it's all falling into place. And, a while back I forced it, and now it's just coming really natural. And I don't know if it's because I've prayed on it, been more focused on it, in a positive way. I'm more patient with people, and it's just a better environment for me.
Beautiful. All right. So the third question in regards to the warm-up questions, is there a book or podcast that has been especially impactful in your life?
I started during the pandemic. I started watching a lot of documentaries, and one of the documentaries that I watched was one on Bruce Lee, and how intriguing it was to me. From all the things that we've experienced over this past year with racism, politics, and just the craziness of the world, when I was watching, I think the documentary was Like Water, or Flow Like Water, and it was all about Bruce Lee, but it encompassed everything that we're going through today. Racism, politics, and just, it just really like, wow, this is just regurgitated. This is the same shit. It's 50 years ago. It's the same stuff. It just keeps repeating itself. So there's a book I just got about Bruce Lee, and I've been reading that lately. But I'm intrigued about the way Bruce Lee has how his approach was to life, and it's very inspiring, intriguing.
Awesome. All right. So to kind of wrap up the warm-up questions here, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Have patience.
There you go.
Have patience. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So Vinny, we're going to, the majority of our conversation is going to be focused on the bodybuilding, but before we kind of like fully dive into that aspect of your life, I do kind of want to just touch on your upbringing a little bit. So if you don't mind just sharing with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners, sure. Kind of like, where did you grow up? Did you have any siblings? Were you involved in sports? Just kind of paint the picture of those younger years. And then we'll just kind of transition into the weights and the bodybuilding and all of that.
Sure. I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey. In an era that, hey, we didn't have cell phones back then. We had nothing. And it was just, you meet your friends on the street corner at a certain time, and you just hoped everybody showed up at that time. That's how we got, together. And I played sports. I played baseball and I played football. I wasn't really great at football. I didn't start. I played for my high school, Dickinson High School. I wasn't a starter. I actually was really a horrible football player. I didn't, like I said, if I could say if I can give advice to my younger self, it would be have patience, right? So when I was younger, I didn't listen to the coaches. I didn't have patience. I thought I should have started, but looking back, I wasn't a great team player. I wasn't a great athlete. I thought I was a great athlete. I guess that was in my own head. I was a decent baseball player. I played first base because I was a lefty. I had a good arm, but I didn't go anywhere with it because I found bodybuilding and I loved it. the second I picked up my first weight, I have no interest in playing sports anymore. And I was 16 or 17 years old.
So let's transition into that then. So let's just unpack when you started lifting weights. You kind of just mentioned that, but so the specific age, was it through sports? And then kind of just like talk about, how you just fell into weights, and kind of let's just begin to unpack that that journey into bodybuilding.
Sure. My next door neighbor was the uncle to Billy Schultz, who owned Billy's bodybuilding gym in Bayonne, New Jersey. And during that time, my dad had brought home a weight set, and the garage door was open. I'd lift weights in the summer, and Billy's uncle would watch me and look at me, and always come over and say, you should go to the gym and go to my nephew's gym. But at the time in 1981 or 82, up until 83, you had to be 18 years old to go to the gym, because the mindset back then was you had to be mature to walk into a gym. And if I recall, on certain days, women went to the gym, and on certain days, guys went to the gym. It wasn't like a co-ed facility. It was like that across the board in every gym. And I think gyms were closed on Sundays. Like, it wasn't open. They weren't open. I remember going to the gym and lying that I was 18, and I was really 16. I signed up. I loved it. Actually, if I go back a little bit further, my friend Dino Nerney and I, we were 15 or 16, and we went to take karate. And it just so happened by coincidence that across the street was Billy's gym. So we would take the bus from Jersey City to Bayonne every day to go to karate. And one day I said, Dino, look at that. There's a gym across the street. And we walked across the street. I walked in, and I never went back to karate. That's the truth. I never went back. I fell in love with the smell of the weights and the rubber floor and the clinking of the metal, and, something that kids, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids won't ever experience today, because it just doesn't exist, because it's a bigger facility they walk into. They don't understand, or they don't, get the same feeling, same mindset. It was, I can't tell you how many teenage kids were benching 315 back in the day and squatting 400 pounds. You don't see that today. Very rare that you see teenagers doing that.
So you walk into Billy's gym, at 16. What, just kind of like, because we were talking before we got on here, just kind of like I had the privilege of being trained by a former Mr. California and natural universe bodybuilder from the kind of the golden era back in the 60s and 70s. When I was the kid, he was my mentor and taught me how to lift weights. So I kind of,
Sure.
Even though I'm a younger guy, I had that opportunity to kind of get that old school hardcore training from Ralph Kroger. So kind of paint the picture in terms of the environment of Billy's gym when you first walked in there, and kind of like the early setting of the gyms back in quote unquote the day, because like you alluded to, like nowadays we have these Globo gyms, we have these big corporate gyms and all this stuff. And a lot of younger people don't understand kind of that old school hardcore mentality. So again, just paint that picture of those early years of Billy's gym, and just gyms in general that you trained at on your way up in the bodybuilding scene.
So I can kind of dissect it in a couple of parts, maybe 2 to 3 parts. It was a different world back then, different mindset. You have to understand that if you were going into a gym in the 80s, you were subjected to getting teased, and you had your balls broken a lot. And it wasn't because you were weaker. It was just because that's just the way everybody rolled back then. If you couldn't stand it, you left, and you were considered, can I be frank on this show here?
100% frank, please.
Okay. You were considered a pussy, and you left the gym. and it either made you a man or it didn't. You became tough because you had your balls broke. And that's just the way the guys were in Billy's. Everybody broke each other's balls. But if an outsider came in and tried to do that, they would jump all over him. They would ridicule him because you were a family. It was a family back then. Everybody loved each other. Everybody cared for each other. But at the same time, everybody teased each other. And, we live in a world today that God forbid you tease somebody or you break their balls. It's, it would almost be borderline bullying, but it wasn't, because it just made you a tougher person. So, but with that said, I had so many mentors. I had so many. At Billy's gym, I learned how to train from the powerlifters, and I learned how to train with, I learned the squat, bench, and deadlift from the powerlifters. I learned how to look at the power rack was your altar. And I learned from the bodybuilders the detail part of training and the diet. And I always say to guys today, I said, yeah, you can go into the gym and train to get bigger. But if you train to get better, you not only get bigger, but you get better and bigger. But if you just train to get bigger, you never become better. And there's a lot behind that. And a lot of people don't understand that. But, I miss those days. I wish it was 1984 again. It would be awesome. But I had a lot of mentors that just, as you said earlier when we were talking, you're a kid in a town that is a small town. You got this guy from Southern California, and just like how people are placed in your life, right? It was almost like kind of eerie when you think about it. Like when I would walk into the Hudson Mall, which was right down the street from my house, all I had to do was walk across the highway. And can you imagine, like, if you hear about kids walking across the highway today, like, parents would be sending diapers to the other parents' home, right? Like, yeah, we'd walk across the highway, wait for the cars to pass. We'd go to the Hudson Mall, and there was this candy store, and this guy, Richie Budnick, owned the candy store, and he loved bodybuilding. He never competed, but he loved bodybuilding. And he would, him and his wife would always come by our house. He made friends with my dad, and they drop off videos of like these old videos of like the guys from the 60s and 70s. And my dad would put up a tarp on the refrigerator and get the reel going. And I'd watch these old movies. And so I had Richie as one of my mentors. He introduced me to Gus Salerno, who was our chairman for the NPC in New Jersey. And Gus ran into a little trouble and went to jail. And his wife, Mary Pat, would take pictures of me with a Polaroid camera and send them to Gussie. And that's how he trained me. It was my first coach, if you will, early 80s. And he got me ready for a show via a Polaroid picture. Hey, we're talking about Jersey City, and we're talking about, a New York attitude and mindset kind of thing. And this is the people that I associated with and ran with and that I knew. And, it sounds crazy, but yeah, he was in jail, and he would mentor me through jail. And then when he got out, we became friends, and he always came over to my house, and he would have coffee with my dad and mom and his wife. And I have, unfortunately he passed away 2 years ago. And then I had John Natashak was a mentor of mine when I was a kid. He was the first guy that I ever watched win the nationals. I actually watched him train for it, and I was in awe, as a kid. So I got a lot of experience watching top pros before they even turned pro. Chuck Waldron, who was a Mr. America, Mr. Universe, Mr. World, in the gyms that I trained at Billy's. And I got to see these guys, and they don't realize it, but I looked up to them. They were gods to me. I was 16, 17, 18 years old. And, you had to have thick skin in that gym. Those guys just broke balls all day long, and it was a hardcore environment. I don't know if I'm going off a little bit here, but it was just a great environment. the 80s was a different feel, a different vibe, a different animal. And, you know, today I like going to gyms like Diamond Gym and Strong and Shapely Gym here in New Jersey. And when I get a chance, I like to go to Bev's in Long Island. It's far from where I live, but, you know, I like to get to those gyms and train because it's like, you know, it's metal on metal. It's music blasting and just good weights. It's an exciting environment.
For sure. Now, I wanna ask you, like, being such a young kid, kind of stepping into, you know, a grown man's territory, referring to Billy's bodybuilding gym. How, and you talked about people, you know, giving each other a hard time, but being such like a young individual, being a teenager, you know, did the guys in that gym, did they kind of take you underneath their wing and kind of like, you know, really pour into you? Or was there kind of like, you know, a wall that was up and you kind of had to eventually break through that wall and earn their respect? What was it like when you were really young? And then once you kind of answer that, then I'll follow up in terms of how you actually got into competing.
No, you had to earn your way. You had to earn it. I mean, they respected me, and you have to understand, even though they're teasing me and breaking my balls when I was really young, they only did that because they knew that, or hoped maybe, I guess, that I would stick around. And I did. I stuck around. You have to understand that it took a while. And then when I started to actually win contests, you know, the respect even came even more. I stood my ground, though, about training. I knew very early on that I wasn't a guy that I wasn't like, okay, you see a guy benching 315, 400. I wasn't impressed with that. I was impressed with the guy who had a lot of muscle. And it always intrigued me. How did you get that muscle? Because I used common sense. Like, I would think like, okay, everybody's genetics are different. And I kind of knew that from early on. It was just an instinct I had. And I knew that the weights were a tool. And I knew that my body, even though I did dabble with trying to lift heavier weights, like every kid does, I just knew that I wasn't going to progress with trying to lift the gym. I knew that the weights were a tool, and I knew that, you know, and I stuck to my ground. And when guys would say, oh, you can't squat this or you can't squat that, and I'm like, I don't give a shit if I can or can't. Look at the way I look and look at the way you look. You look like shit and I don't. And I stuck to my horses. You know, I stuck to my beliefs. And I rode with that the rest of my career. I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't try to train heavy. I did. But I knew the staple of my philosophy worked of lifting moderate weight and lighter weight. It just worked for my body. And guys, I think after a while appreciated that I believed in what I believed in. And then they saw it was starting to work, you know, because when you're a skinny kid and you're saying, I want to lift light, you know, you're like, what is this kid doing? Like, you know, but no, I stuck to it. And I love training philosophies. I love different styles of training. You know, when I say heavy and light, like what's heavy to me might be light to somebody else. You know, I'm not a strong guy. I've never been a strong bodybuilder. You would never see me squatting 500 pounds. It wasn't that. I wasn't that guy. You know, I was lucky to get to 400 pounds, like squatting. Like I think I squatted in bodybuilding. I think I squatted 495 twice in my life, and it was a ton of weight. I was never one to lift heavy.
So how did you at such a young age, because, you know, you mentioned, like, you know, the power lifters there and there's the bodybuilders there. How did you at such a young age, Vinny, kind of like get to that point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm going to do it this way? Because like when we're young, we're so impressionable and we kind of just like, well, this person told me I should do it this way, so I'm going to do that. How did you kind of work through that and figure out, like, you know what, this is the way I'm going to train, And, I don't really care what anybody else is going to tell me, because that's kind of like hard to do when you're a younger individual surrounded by men. So how did you get to that point?
I remember one day, there was this guy, Pete Donardo, and he was a monster. He was just a freak, and he could bench like 400 pounds as a teenager. And I was training with him one day, and I tried to keep up with him. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I couldn't even get past 275 the way he was doing it. And he said to me, why don't you just stick with 225 and do it the right way, and then eventually work your way up? And he gave me the confidence that day to stick to my own guns. He did. And I think he was like a year younger than me or a year older than me. I can't remember. But we trained one day, and it was just like one of those moments where it was like, I'm training with the dude that can bench an easy 405. He could walk into the gym and warm up with 315, and I got to work my way up to 200. I wasn't that guy. And he's like, just stick to your own guns. And I just remember, like, just do you. Just follow your own path. And that's just the way I've always been. I've always been stubborn like that. I've tried every different training for style, philosophy, and I've tried them all. I've tried them all, and I think they all work, and all of them work only for a short period of time. Nothing works forever.
Very well put. So I want to get into, you alluded to kind of like your first coach. You're sending him the Polaroids while he's in jail and stuff like that. How soon after you stepped into the Billy's gym did you kind of like have this thought or come to the point where you're like, you know what, I want to compete, I want to be a bodybuilder? And then how did you actually get into bodybuilding, so to speak?
Oh man, that's the easy one. So again, if I could tell the old Vinny, have patience. So what happened was, we signed up at Billy's, me and my friend Dino. We signed up, I think it was September or October of 1982. And Billy, the owner of Billy's gym, had a contest in February 27th, 1984. I think that was the day. And it was held at St. Mary's High School, or St. Mary's Grammar School in Bayonne, New Jersey. I think it was that. I said, I want to train for this contest. And all the guys were like, you only been working out for 3 weeks. What are you doing? I'm like, no, I want to do it. And so the ball busting commenced early on, like really early on. And I brought it on myself, So we had a lot of guys in there. I love these guys. I miss these guys. Some of them I don't see anymore. And some have passed away. And, these are my guys. And I miss them. And I just wish that, you can have that one day, go back and train with them, So I trained for the contest. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I was cocky and arrogant, and I know what I'm doing kind of attitude. And I went to McDonald's every day, and I ate fish fillet sandwiches because they were fish. But I threw the bread away. So I must have been doing something right, And I remember hearing, oh, you have to carb up the night before. And I was begging my mother to make me a baked potato the night before. And she was like, you're a pain in my ass. I got to make you a baked potato. And I had this potato, and I thought some miraculous thing was going to happen the day of the show. I come in dead last. It was 3 kids. I took third. And I can't remember his last name. This kid, Billy. And Billy won the Jersey Cup the year before. And he took me under his wing and he said, if you do everything I tell you to do, you can win the contest that I won last year, but it's in July. Now we're in February. As a 16-year-old, you're like, July is a lifetime away. I don't know if I could do that. He's like, listen to me. You think about it, come back on Monday, and I'll help you if you're serious. So I did. I came back, and that weekend when I competed in Billy's contest, it was called the Mr. Hudson County. It was a non-sanctioned event in February, and I met Len Boslin. Now, Len Boslin was friends with Billy. I don't know how he pulled it off, but he got Len to MC it, and Len was the MC for the Mr. Olympia and judge for the IFBB. And I met him, and he told my father, "Your son has the potential to become a very good light heavyweight." And, these are the things that stick out. You remember these things when you're a kid. And I remember talking to him, and he said, "You're going to be a good light heavyweight." And Billy, this teenage kid, I can't remember his name, he took me under his wing for a couple of months, and I did everything he told me to do. And I ended up winning the Jersey Cup. And when I won that, man, it was like the best feeling. It was like, wow, it was my drug. I was addicted to it. And shortly after that, I met Gus Salerno. And I trained with Gus a couple of times. I would take, there's like tentacles. You just start meeting all these people, And I met this guy through Gus Salerno, and they took me up to Golden Arm, which was a really hardcore gym in Jersey City. And I would go up to Golden Arm by bus because I didn't have a car. I wasn't driving. I was only 16, 17. And it was dead of winter, freezing out. I'm on the bus freezing. And my mother would think I was nuts. And, like, what are you doing? It's just a fad. He'll get out of it. And that's what they thought. And I got the experience of training with another group of guys up there, Golden Arm, and they were even more hardcore than the guys at Billy's. They were like crazy. Like they would do squat offs. They would go, you would set, I think it was a Wednesday night, and guys would warm up to 315, and then they would just stay at 315, and there would be like 5 or 6 guys, and the only rest you got was when you weren't squatting. And it was you go kind of thing. And you'd have to just squat until you got the 10 reps. And it didn't sound like much, right? But when you're doing it for 2 hours, and that's what they would do. And, these guys had huge legs, and I joined them, and I get clobbered and get beat up. But, it was just like a great environment. I mean, I wish those days were back. I don't think of it in the sense of like I'm missing out on. I wish, like, some people are like living in the past. I don't live in the past. I just wish it was here again. But I don't live in the past. I don't want to come off like that. It just really great memories, and hardcore training that just is very rare to find today. I walk up to guys when I see a guy squatting perfectly and they're squatting balls out. I walk up to them and I compliment them. I let them know, like, you just did a great job. It was impressive. Even when I just see somebody training hard in general.
For sure. So, Vinny, so you win this show, and you're kind of like you said, that was like your drug. You're instantly addicted. So I just, because you're a IFBB Pro Bodybuilder. But I know from just reading some of your social media and things like that, if I remember correctly, it took you 16 years to get your pro card.
Yeah.
So I really want to just kind of like, because I want the listeners to understand that, sometimes in life things come easy. So, we have natural tendencies and what have you, but life overall isn't easy, and it's a grind. It's hard. And bodybuilding for most of us, bodybuilding for most people, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I want you just to kind of, from that first competition you told us about, you got third out of third. And then, I think later that year in July, you actually won the competition. But kind of from those early competitions, what was that bodybuilding journey like? And just kind of like maybe touch on some highlights up to the point when you actually got your pro card.
So as a teenager, I had some success. I won one or two teenage shows, I took second place in the Teenage USA. It was the first time I ever traveled. And when I took second in the Teen USA as a lightweight in Colorado. And when I came home, and the only reason why my parents actually let me do it was because my cousins lived in Colorado, and my aunt and uncle said, yeah, you could stay with me. And I was there for like 2 weeks and just enjoyed, hanging out. And when I came back, I told my dad, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And he's like, I support you 100%. And my mother turned around and said, cut this shit out. This is just a hobby. And I'm like, no, it's not a hobby. She goes, yeah, but you're not making any money. I said, no, I'm not making any money right now, but I'm laying the groundwork. And she's like, you have pipe dreams. And my mother was against it. My father was 100% for it. So later on, moving forward, I did a couple of contests, local shows, and in New Jersey and New York. And for the guys and the people who are listening that are my age that competed in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, will know what I'm talking about. When you won the East Coast, the Suburban, which now is the Kemper Classic, they changed the name. When you won the East Coast, the Suburban, you won the Jersey, you were a god. When you walked into a gym and people knew, see, that's a difference today. When somebody won a show back then, everybody knew who you were. And when people win today, nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows who pros are coming out of Jersey or New York because there's so many that come out. And when I won the Suburban back in 1989 and walked into gyms after that, and people were like, that's Vinny Galanti. Man, that was just fuel to the fire of the drug that just, motivated me. And it was more of an addiction. And I had a business sense from my dad. And he said, if you're going to do this, make it a business. Figure out how to make it a business, because all of the people that run bodybuilding are using you to make money. And he said, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're their product, and figure out what product out of this will make you money. So I never even thought of that. And my father was like really smart about things because my dad owned a cab and limo service for 30 something years. And he had a business sense. So I remember shortly after the 89 Suburban, I linked up with Lou Zwick from American Muscle, who I think the show was American Sports Network that was airing American Muscle on ESPN. And I was so fortunate and blessed to be at the right place at the right time, getting on a lot of his shows. So I was on cable. I was on, ESPN a lot, like 90, 91. And in 1992, I won my weight class at the Junior USA and the Mr. New Jersey and the Junior USA. And I don't remember the guy's name, but this guy contacts me and he says, I want to help market you. I said, sure, let's hear what this guy has to say. And we made up these brochures that basically highlighted my career in a sense at that time, with pictures and all sorts of stuff. And I wrote to every magazine out there. Any name that I found in Muscle and Fitness, Flex Magazine, Iron Man, Muscular Development, Muscle Training Illustrated, which, people wouldn't even know what that is today. And I just wrote to every single one of them. And nobody answered me, not one person. But shortly before that, when I was it was back like 1990, 91. I was dating a girl in Jersey City, and her mother was the assistant editor to Muscle Training Illustrated. It was a guy named Dan Laurie who owned the magazine. And that's an old school name right there, Dan Laurie. And she said to me, you want to be in a magazine? I'm like, yeah, I want to be in a magazine. She was I'm going to have somebody contact you and do a little write-up on you. And that was the first time I got into a magazine, only because of the girl I was dating. And my father said to me, it's not how you know it and what you know, it's who you know. And take those, take advantage of those things. And I just rode with it. So I got into my first magazine and in 90, right after the 89 Suburban. And I liked it. And I said to him, Dad, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And being on ESPN and getting to the Jersey in 92 to win that and then win the Junior USA only added to that, made me a little more popular. And I remember going out to California for the Junior USA in 92. Now at this time, not one magazine ever wrote me back. Nobody wrote me back. And in walks Mike Christian. And he was one of the most popular guys back in the day. And he was hanging out with Jason Mathis. And Jason Mathis became, at the time, one of the most popular photographers. But he had nobody to shoot. And he walks over to me and Mike Christian says my name. And he's like, yeah, I know your name. I'm like, you do? I'm like, holy shit, these guys in California know who I am. This is pretty cool. And Jason asked me on the spot, would you do a photo shoot right now? I got the time. I'm like, sure. So I dropped everything I was doing. I was training, but I just rode with it. And I did a photo shoot with Jason right on the spot. And that photo shoot got me on a cover and got me into one of the magazines. I can't remember which one it was, but sometimes opportunities knock, you don't even expect it. And I continued writing to all the magazines all through 92 into 93. Again, nobody answered me, but I took the time to invest. And I gave myself $1,000 limit. I said, I'm going to invest $1,000 in myself. And, that's one of the conversations I had with my dad. And he talked about businesses. You got to invest a little to make some money. So how much are you willing to lose if you make nothing out of this? And I thought $1,000 would be, reasonable. I don't want to go any more than that because I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I get to the USA, and again, right before the contest, nobody's writing to me. Nobody's caring for Vinny Galanti. Nobody cared, right? And Lance Coloretti was my trainer at the time. And Lance and I put a really good program together for the USA. And a couple of weeks beforehand, I said, Lance, I think I want to go to the Junior USA. It's in Baltimore. We can drive down to it. And he's like, no. I just want you to peak for the USA. I said, Lance, listen to me. All of the magazines are going to be down there. I just want to hit the gym. I want to hit the contest. So that way the main photographers who were there are going to remember me when I get to the USA. I go, this is strictly business. I'm not doing it for any other reason. So he's like, nah, I really don't want you to do it. I said, look, I'm going to do it anyway. You got to come with me. So we ended up going, and I ended up taking second place in the middleweight class. And it didn't affect me mentally because I didn't go there to win it. I went there to get my name out there. Fast forward 3 weeks later, I think 2 or 3 weeks later, went to the USA in California with one of my best friends, Chris Barron, and we're there all week. And I meet everybody. I meet Chris Cormier, Sean Ray, everybody. I mean, I can't even think of the names right now, but meet everybody. And they're all cool with me. And they started introducing me to photographers. I end up winning the USA on Saturday. I didn't have one photo shoot lined up, but then literally from Sunday morning until Thursday, all day long, I was shooting with the best of the magazines. And then it was just on from there. And I set it up that every time I did the nationals after that, I called every photographer and would say, I'm going to be out in California, because it was a different world back then. You could call the photographer and say, I'm going to be there. They would shoot you and then sell the pictures to the magazines. Today, the photographer charges the athlete. It wasn't like that back then. So I looked at, hey, I'm going to make an investment. I'm going to fly out to California on my own dime. I'm going to set up these photo shoots, and I would probably set them up probably 3 or 4 days after. And it taught me to be more of a professional in the sense of staying on your diet. Don't bulk up after, don't blow your diet. And it just set the tone for about almost a 10-year period of being on magazine covers. And, a lot of competitors today would say, why the hell would you pay? That's so stupid to fly out to California. I said, yeah, but you're paying $2,000 to a guy to do a photo shoot that you're never going to get in a magazine. You're just paying somebody. So I would rather pay $2,000 for a flight and a hotel for a few days with a chance of getting on a cover than to have my picture taken by myself on Instagram and get 2,000 likes. That does not motivate me at all. I don't get that mindset. So it was a different mindset, and I wanted to be on a cover of a magazine, and I got articles and layouts, and then guest posings came from that. So funny story, I was kind of upset. I wasn't getting any guest posings, and I was a good poser, but nobody wanted to see anybody but mass monsters as a guest poser. They wanted to see the big guys. They didn't care if he posed good or not. So I said to a promoter, I said, listen, if you fly me out, I don't remember where it was. I just went on. I always took chances. So if you fly me out, you don't have to pay me. Don't do anything but just fly me out. Put me up in a hotel. You don't have to pay me anything. And I'll guest pose for you for free. He's like, for free? I'm like, yeah. And that's how I started guest posing. I would actually do it for free. Give me a table to sell my pictures. And then after about 2 years of doing that and guest posing around the country, then promoters started contacting me because I was a good guest poser. I treated the fans, the way they wanted to be treated, and I would sell pictures, and, it was a business to me. And yeah, it took me 16 years to turn pro because I competed in an era of, I placed second to fifth in the nationals over the course of 16 years. And I remember when I turned pro in 2008. Now, I don't know if Steve Weinberger remembers this or not, but he came up to me and said, what is your first pro show going to be? I looked at him like, pro show? I'm not a pro. I just won the Masters Nationals. I got to do the Nationals to turn pro. He's like, no. You turn pro tonight. You're an IFBB pro. I'm like, no, you don't understand, Steve. My mindset was you got to win the Nationals to turn pro, or the USA. And I didn't accept it. I was like, no, I want to give my pro card back then. Like, no, you just turned pro. And I remember being on a phone with Bob Ciccarillo because he was trying to talk me out of it. I'm like, no, Bob, I don't want to take my pro card that way. I want to earn it. He goes, you did earn it. I'm like, nah, you don't earn it at the Masters Nationals. You earn it at the Nationals. And that was the mindset. It was a hardcore mindset. And it bothered me for quite a number of years that's how I turned pro, because I interpreted that as an easy way out. And I thought, I'm a very sensitive guy, and I always think people don't like me. And I was thinking for a lot of years, like my counterparts, the guys I competed with, were looking down on me. Like, oh, Vinny Galanti turned pro through the back door at taking the Masters Nationals. And I take nothing away from anybody who's turning pro, at another show besides the Nationals of USA. But for me, the Nationals were it. I wanted to turn pro there. No other place. If I turn pro with the USA, yeah, more power to me. That would be great too. God forbid I won the North America. That was like, no way. I don't want to turn pro at the North America. The only good bodybuilder that turned pro at the North America was Dexter Jackson and Paul Dillette. Those are the only two that I would respect. And not to take away from anybody else. I don't mean that in a derogatory way or a disrespectful way. But, I had high standards for myself, and the Nationals was the highest standard you could possibly think of. So every time I hit the Nationals, I was going against, like 30, 40 guys that were amazing. I mean, you saw guys who were 10th and 15th place who could win today easy. It would be like a cakewalk. These guys were just animals. I mean, you have to understand, back then it was like good bodybuilders go to the nationals, they don't even make the top 10. Amazing bodybuilders go to the nationals, don't even make the top 5. You had to be fucking amazing to make the top 5. And, I just, held myself in high regards to, guys who beat me were amazing. They were just like crazy conditioning and, and just think like an era that is hard to duplicate. And there's guys today that are really good too, but they're very little, very few. Back then you had way more, it was just different animal.
So I want to, I want to touch on the kind of the business mindset that you started out with, because that's even something today, just listening to different bodybuilding podcasts and things like that. And obviously we have this whole social media thing, but for you, Vinny, starting off kind of in those earlier years with that business mindset alongside the bodybuilding, in the long run, how did that pay off for you? Because I know, you had different sponsorships and stuff. So just kind of touch on and wrap up how that business mindset in the end did benefit you and how you did end up at some point making a living and a career through bodybuilding.
So I had so one day I guest posed at a show in Jersey with Sean Ray. It was, I think in 93. And so I met him, and I kind of met him once or twice in California. And then at the USA, when I won it, he said, "You can milk this title for about 2 to 3 years. You can milk this and contact the photographers, get your photo shoots in." And that motivated me, the way he looked at it and the way he was talking to me that day. And then I had an opportunity to work a couple of years with Monica Brandt, who was very popular back in the 90s and early 2000s. And I just watched her. I watched how she treated her fans, and I watched how she how she interacted with promoters and sponsors, and just how she was a professional. And I'm like, Sean Ray and Monica Brandt are business. They're all business. And I just wanted to be like them. I never got to the Olympia, never done anything like that, because it wasn't in the cards for me. Didn't work out that way. And I don't dwell on that, but I just look over the course of the time that I've had where, I was with Universal Nutrition for 16 years. And I remember I called them out of the blue and just said, "I would like to come down and interview with you guys. I would like to be one of your sponsored athletes." And they said, "Sure, come on down." So my exact words were to them, "I could be your liaison between your supplements and your customers, because a lot of people can relate to me more than they can relate to Dorian Yates." And I walked out of there thinking, what the fuck did I just say to them? Did I actually just say that to them? Did I just say people can relate to me more than they can relate to Dorian Yates? And I'm like in my car, I'm like, oh my God, they're laughing at me right now. And next thing I know, I get a phone call a couple of days later. "Congratulations, we'd like to sign you to a 1-year contract." And it was real money back then. I mean, I got paid. I was like, "You're going to pay me that? All right, awesome." And every year it increased, and every year I got to travel around the world, and every year I got in some publication with them on a cover. And every year, I even parlayed stuff when promoters would use Universal. I would end up guest posing. I would just bullshit my way in, and I'd sell my own pictures at a show, like, at a Universal booth. They didn't know I was doing it, but I did it. But I always represented them very well, and I did the right thing for them and by them. But Universal put me on the map. I mean, I was with them 16 years, and then we parted ways mutually. Like they wanted to go in a different direction. They were going in the direction that it is now. They saw the direction it was going in. Hey, we can get athletes and not pay them a dime, because the guys I worked with for Animal and Universal, when we would go to the booth at the cage at the Arnold Classic, We were the original guys in the animal booth, and we set the tone for what it is today. Now, you'll get anybody to do it for free. We didn't do it for free. We actually got paid, and that's the direction they went in. They offered me, I think the year before, they cut my salary down, 2 years before they cut my salary down. And then the year before that, they cut it a little bit more. And then they offered me $0. They said, we want to keep you, but we're not going to pay you anymore. And I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we parted ways. And then, I was retiring and I never thought I'd compete again. And I thought, okay, this is it. We're done. I was focusing on my career, my business. My business was doing good. And I thought, I'm in a good place. I'm all right. But I didn't like the way I was ending my career because I was so burnt out. Because by the time I did turn pro, you have to understand, I had a couple of things going on. So I turned pro in 2008. I was uncomfortable turning pro as the Masters national champion. I wanted to be the nationals champion. So that played with my head. I didn't feel like I belonged because I won my pro card that way. I earned my pro card that way. I didn't feel like I was good enough. I felt like people were talking about me. I felt like I was inadequate, and it just like played with my head. I felt like I 100% didn't deserve to be in any pro show. And I think with that, I didn't give it 100%. And so every contest just kept getting worse and worse for me. And every time I tried to make it better, I would try harder, and the stress level was just through the roof. So in 2012, I retired, and I thought, all right, that's it. I'm done. And I tried powerlifting because I was hanging out with a lot of the guys at the time from Animal, and I knew all of the powerlifters. And I went to my really good friend, Andre Skiba, who owns Skiba's gym in South Jersey. And under his wing and my good friend, Eric Schwartz, they taught me everything there is to know about powerlifting. I only did it once. It was a one and done kind of thing. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to be kind of like, competitive in something. And I didn't know what direction I was going in. And I have a tendency to get depressed really easy when I'm not doing something. I need to be doing something. And so I did the powerlifting meets. I had some success in it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It brought me back to the camaraderie of like the kind of training that I was used to back in my early days. So I love that. And I was going to continue. But then a few months later, I tore my right shoulder, and I tore the rotator cuff completely off, all four heads. And it required 9 anchors to repair the whole thing. And I said to my doctor, I said, listen, I have no idea if I ever want to step on stage again, but can you fix it to where I can get back in the gym and train? I said, because that's my bread and butter. If I can't train, I might as well jump off a bridge. And I actually said that to him. And he looked at me. I go, I'm joking. I'm not going to really jump off a bridge. I'm just trying to let you know how important this is to me. I really want to be able to train hard. He took me serious, and I explained what I've accomplished in bodybuilding. And he realized, okay, this is not just another guy who just lifts weights. So he saw how serious I was, and he fixed it. And it took me a year to actually start, those anchors had to, heal really well into my shoulder. And it took me a year, and just about a year to the day, about a little bit less, a little bit more, maybe, I tear my left side. Same freaking injury. Rotator cuff completely torn off, all four heads. And it required 5 anchors to repair it. So now here we are, we're in, it's now 2.5 years. I haven't really trained. I've lost all my size. I'm completely depressed. My business that I was running was not running the way I wanted it to run. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I was just in a bad spot. And I just thought, man, all these things are happening to me. And it was at that time, just shortly before that time, like around that time, I joined a at my church, St. Paul's Church, I joined the men's ministry, and I did a cornerstone, and it was a weekend retreat, and I was one of the things that saved me, and it was so great. I did it, and to this day now, I still attend every Tuesday mornings. I attend a men's prayer group, and it sets me off for the week. It puts me in a good tone, good place, with good prayer and just structure of having God in my life. I used to be ashamed to say it. It was like really weird, like telling people like I follow Christ, and it's like people would be like, "What? You're weirdo," So it's like to say this publicly is a big step for me, but it's all good. And the thing is like when I decided to come back and compete, everybody was like, "What are you, nuts? Like you haven't trained in 3 years." So I'm going to do it. I'm going to start winning shows again. And I had a lot against me. A lot of people thought I was crazy. And I went to the 2017 Baltimore Masters Pro. And I take dead last. Like shit. Fuck, man. All right. It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to go back next year. I go back in 2018. Dead last again. Oh my God. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And that weekend I came home, and I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and I've been following the Cowboys since I'm 12 years old. And at the time, I could not stand the New England Patriots. I can't stand the Giants, and I can't stand the Patriots. I'm a Cowboy fan from Jersey, right? Figure that one out. So the New England Patriots are playing a Sunday night game. I'm home from Baltimore, having my own pity party for myself. Like, this just can't get any worse. Let me back up. I just had personal things going on. I closed my business down. My niece passed away from cancer. And then the biggest things, I'm like, I'm flopping in 2 contests and, feeling like shit, having a pity party. And here's a interview with Tom Brady. And this was the turning point and how I became a fan of Tom Brady's. And, they were talking about his age and how he had to change everything he does in the off season in order to play. And it didn't resonate at that moment. I remember a couple of days later, I started thinking about it. And I'm like, let me look at what Tom Brady does. And I started looking up stuff that he does and how he took his off season to another level. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to become a fan of bodybuilding again, be a student of bodybuilding. What do I need to do to make Vinny Galanti click and turn again? And I just started studying all these new training techniques and these modalities of just from cupping to ART, active release technique, stretching. What do I need to do to make my body work again? Not only just training, but just getting my body physically in shape. So it all just rolled into place. I just started different training styles, and I found that time under tension works amazing for me. And then all of a sudden my muscles just started coming back and my flexibility started coming back. And I entered the 2019 Masters Pittsburgh Pro, not only in the over 50, but in the over 40 also, two separate contests in the same night. And I ended up winning both of them. And now here we are today, when you and I are having this conversation. And, I wanted to go to the New York Pro, but it wasn't feeling right. But COVID happened, and I decided to have a longer off season last year. And so now I'm 12 weeks out from my next 212 shows, and life is pretty good.
So before we touch on your current prep, Vinny, I do want you to touch on just kind of like, because you mentioned it earlier in our conversation, but I want you to touch on mindset, because I truly believe that mindset is everything in life. And you talked
Absolutely.
about like kind of like when you don't have, something going on, like maybe a major goal or something like that, like you can, with what you said, you can kind of get depressed and stuff. So how important is mindset? And then how important, which is kind of tied in with mindset, how important is having a very specific purpose in your life. So touch on mindset, kind of how you got yourself through those depressed times, and then just also touch on the importance of having that very solid purpose within life.
Sure. Listen, I'm like anybody else. I put my pants on one leg at a time every day. I'm an average guy, and I hold myself accountable to set goals and to accomplish them. And I doubt myself all the time. And it's funny, like I've accomplished a lot, but I doubt myself along the way. And I reach out to a lot of people that I respect, and I ask them for opinions, and I don't look, some people say, oh, well, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, right? Well, I don't look at it that way. I only ask people that I respect, and I only reach out to people that I respect. Yeah, man, it's a challenge when you're down. It's a challenge to see the light, to say, I want to do this. When you got everything stacked up against you, you got to really, really believe in yourself and dig deep, and you can't let outside influences, bring you down. And you got to look at your friends who are encouraging you. Are they just blowing smoke up your ass, or are they being serious? And you got to look at the people who are negative. Are they haters, or are they telling you the truth? And you have to balance that out, because we live in a world today that, oh, we just have haters. No, maybe they're telling you the truth. Maybe you need to hear the truth, because we're so weak today in our culture that you just, hey, maybe you do suck, and it's okay. Find another way how to do it. So I was realizing I did suck and I wasn't good. And how do I change this? How do I make Vinny tick again? And I just became a student of life again, from being around positive people who believe in a higher power, guys that believe in God, and a prayer group, just being a positive, good person, to helping people that need it. I have a friend currently I'm endorsed by G Code Nutrition. And one of the guys that is associated with, his name is Jerry, and he has a son who's autistic. And I've volunteered with his organization, Elephants for Autism. Just do something good for somebody, and just be there and helping in the gym with a few people who have autism, and training them for the day. It just feels good to do something good for somebody. Put yourself in positive situations. Yeah, man, listen, life sucks, but it doesn't have to suck for you. You could be in a really bad situation. I mean, listen, I had, my business was failing because the economy was bad. I had 3 major gyms opening up. My niece was dying from cancer. I was depressed because I couldn't train. And that's like the littlest part of it, right? I'm complaining. I'm complaining because I can't train. And she's battling cancer. And my sister is 16 years older than me. So my niece was 6 years younger than me. So we were very close. And, life happens and life gets in the way, and you have to take the good from it, because there's always bad, right? There's always bad. And when I start to get into, I think everybody has a tendency to get into a little funk, a little depression. And people always focus on, why am I in this depressed state? I don't do that. And everybody has a depressed state, knows that there's that feeling, right? There's that vile feeling that comes over you when you're depressed. So I look at it and I go, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to the gym right now. I'm going to go fucking train, because the gym cures everything. And I don't just say that. I don't say it as a meathead. I don't say it as a musclehead. I don't say it anything other than just, you know what? Go to the gym and get a good workout in. And usually what depresses you can be cured by beating yourself up in the gym. And it doesn't depress you as much, and it makes things clear. It doesn't fix the problem, but it makes things clear so you can think about, man, that's kind of a stupid mindset. Why am I thinking so negative? You know, and you just move on. I mean, listen, I don't have the answers for everything, but I just handle my business differently. And I just try to surround myself with more positive people. And there's friends that I have that don't even know when I am in a funk. I just give them a call because they're just usually in a good mood, and it just sets me off in a good mood. You know, like there's so many tools around that could just put you in a better mood. You know, I think depression runs in my family. I know my mother had it a little bit. I think my grandfather had it. But I fortunately have dealt with it a lot better. I think because I have the gym. I'm not sure, but but there's been times when I didn't want to get out of the house a couple of days in a row. Like that's happened over the years. And you know, I deal with it, but I've never medicated myself, never went to a doctor for it because I refuse to do that. I wouldn't do it, but I don't want to, well, this is turning into a, another direction here, but, I just find a way to always get out of it because I find a situation puts me in it. And then it's not me being negative or depressed. It's situations. And then you figure, hey, that's just a situation. This will pass. And it might be a day, it might be 2 days, but I don't like, I feel for people who can't get out of it, you know, who have severe depression. I feel for those people who just can't, and they stay in a funk for a long time, for years. I've never been that guy, but I've also succeeded and had my best successes coming from a depression. Like, and then I get angry. I'm like, why am I acting like this way? And then I get motivated to a whole nother level to accomplish something. And I've had those experiences too.
Yeah, and that's I love, and that's a big reason why I love the podcast, because as human beings we can glean so much from another human being, right? So I appreciate you touching on that, Vinny. And we're gonna kind of start heading towards the finish line here.
Sure.
But I want to touch on a couple more things here. Now, you mentioned earlier at some point after you had not done as well as you wanted to in competing after your comeback, you kind of like had this moment where you kind of did some research on Tom Brady, and you realized that you needed to make some adjustments, you needed to pivot, you needed to make some changes. Specifically in regards to training, you mentioned time under tension. I just want you to touch on kind of training and nutrition. How have those two factors changed in terms of how you kind of had to go about those two things in this second awakening, so to speak, with your bodybuilding career?
So when I tapped into my training, you know, I just realized, you know, I remember from my younger days that every time I tried to train outside the box of what worked for me, I just would always have a problem in the sense of like a small little injury, a tweak here or there. So it was really difficult for me to put the ego aside and say, you know what, I'm going to use moderate weight. I'm going to control the weight where I'm going to do it under a pattern of 4 seconds down, 2 seconds up. And then I even went as far as I would have static holds. I would hold the weights in a stretch position, always aiming for 12 to 15 reps. And I started playing around with my food where I said, let me eat more than I am accustomed to. Let me have a better off season. And next thing I know, I'm eating as if I were training for a contest, but without rotating my carbs, having good, clean food longer. And next thing I know, my waist is getting smaller, my shoulders getting rounder. And I was becoming Vinny again, and I was becoming the bodybuilder I once was. And that led me into going into the Masters Pittsburgh Pro. And I never stuck with one thing in my training. I have my bread and butter, which I know works, and that's time under tension. And then I also know common sense tells you that your body is going to get used to that. So I would gravitate away from it and train, let's say, a little heavier in an 8 to 10 rep range, maybe 6 sometimes, 6 rep range. And I would challenge myself with a few different heavier sets. And then I think there's a new terminology. To me, it's new. They call it a top set now. And I didn't understand what that meant. And I dove into that. So what does this mean? So one little technique that I've been training with the last couple of months, maybe like 6 months now, that I've been on and off with, has been working fantastic, is sticking with 5 reps leading up to my top set. So let's say, for conversation's sake, I want to squat 315, and I know I could do it. But at 54, I have a hard time doing 10 to 12 reps with 135, 185, 225, 275. It really messes with my central nervous system. It didn't in the past, but now that I'm 54, it does. So I stick with 5 reps leading up to my heaviest set. And once I get to my heaviest set, I do that for 5 reps. I make sure I'm warmed up. I'm comfortable with it. Everything was working. My lower back is good. My knees are good. And then I go balls out and I go to failure. And that technique has been working for me pretty good on every exercise. In my deadlifts, my squats, my bench. Actually, I don't bench, but like if I dumbbell bench, even with curls, even with any ancillary exercises, tricep pushdowns, kickbacks, I stick with that. And then I go back to time under tension. It's been going back and forth. And my diet has been really good. I'm leaner than I normally am. And it's kind of a weird feeling for me to be this lean because I like my food. You know, I'm Italian and I like to have my bread and my pasta on Sundays. But I've been more strict this year. And I've been just more, I've been a student more of, in a sense, where I've been like, okay, hey, I don't know it all. Let me just see what these guys are doing today. And let me utilize the social media to my advantage. Let me see what guys are doing. And there's guys out there that are doing some funky and new techniques. And I think like it looks kind of stupid. And then there's some people out there that are doing some stuff that are pretty cool. Like a buddy of mine, Brendan Ray, I hit him up. I don't know if you know that name, but Brendan does what I do, but he took it to another level. I'm like, hey, Brendan trains the way I do, but he added a little something to it. I hit him up. We talked. And he gave me a few pointers. And like I added some of his techniques to my training. And that's just a beautiful thing because, you know, the old school guys, we stick together. We love each other. Like we all know what it takes to train. And I'm getting a lot of respect from these guys today because they're like, Vin, I don't know how the hell you do it. You know, just, you know, it's a mindset and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I really enjoy it.
So I want to touch on, before I kind of ask the final question here, I do want to touch on a little bit more in depth, kind of the current prep you're in from your social media. And I know that you mentioned it earlier, you're prepping for the Tampa 212 and then the Chicago 212. So just kind of explain, you know, your reasoning behind picking those shows and just kind of your excitement and mindset heading into those 2 shows later this year.
The timing is right for me. Like I'm like mentally into, I'm ready to torture myself with a diet. I'm okay with it right now. I'm ready for it mentally. I think you got to be in a good spot. I'm so blessed and I don't know, I don't know the right words to use. I'm getting a second chance to do something that I love to do. I'm healthy again. I feel good. And I just want to just have this opportunity. You know, listen, am I going to win? Probably not. My goal is to be the best I can be and do the best I can right now. This is just an opportunity to get a second chance in the 212s, close that chapter on my terms, in the best shape that I can possibly present. And then after this, I'm going to focus on Masters shows. And, I know that I could do well in Masters. I've already won 2 Masters shows. And there are some good Masters guys out there that I like to compete against, and challenge myself against them. I'm so happy I have this opportunity. And I'm just looking forward to getting on stage with some of the best 212 guys and just, maybe make them a little nervous. Who knows? But hey, they know I'm coming. I know they're not scared of me. I'm 54 years old and I just want to do the best I can, have fun with this. That's all.
For sure. So I want to just make sure that we're clear that you're for the listeners out there, you're gonna be competing in the Tampa 212, the Chicago 212, and that's not the Masters. So like you're going to be competing against the dudes that are going to be in the Olympia and all that this year. I just want to make sure, because I think it's honorable. I think it's so cool. You're talking about this second chance, but I just want the listeners to understand that these 2 shows that you're in current prep for, they're not Master shows. Like somebody can be 21, somebody can be 35, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And when I want everybody to understand, having a second chance doesn't mean you win. Having a second chance just means you do it right. That's all that matters to me. I'm doing it right. I want to walk away. If I don't make top 10, I'm going to be a content and happy person, because I know that I'm going to present a great package. And I just, I don't want to be that guy at 64 laying on a couch saying, when I was 54, I could have done that. I don't want to do that. And I know there's life for me in the Masters. And it took me a long time to come to this spot, because I want to be Vinny Galanti again. I want to be that guy again, but I know I'm not. But at the same time, if I don't at least give it a try, I'll never know. And I just want to know. I just want to know if I can hang. That's all. If I can crack the top 10, yeah, I'll be cool.
Love
and
it.
I want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
For sure, Vinny. I just want to ask you one last question, and then before I do the outro, I'll give you an opportunity to share your about your sponsor if people want to reach out to you. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you this last question. What do you feel like is the greatest lesson bodybuilding has taught you?
Oh, the greatest lesson bodybuilding has taught me. Whatever you apply in life, you can be successful in, because bodybuilding has taught me discipline, and it transcends into everyday life. That's really it. Yeah. Love it.
So, Vinny, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to kind of follow along, your current prep and just find out more about you, where can people reach out to you? Where can people follow along? Where can people find you?
On Instagram, it's at Vinny Galanti _. And Vinny Galanti on Facebook.
Perfect. All right. So Vinny, I just personally want to thank you so much. We had some hurdles we had to jump over, which I wish the listeners could kind of see behind the scenes, but we had some hurdles we had to jump over to even get this conversation going, but we made it happen. So just personally, I just want to thank you so very much for taking time to share your story and to come onto the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking time looking out for me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
For sure. So 127 Fit podcast listeners, once again, I just want to thank you very much for your listening ears. If you would like to find out more about myself or the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, you can find that information on Instagram at 127 Fit, Facebook, Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review for the podcast, especially within the iTunes Apple Podcast app, that would be greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. Also, if you find great value in this episode or another episode of the 127 Fit podcast, I would just ask that you would take this episode or those episodes that you're finding that value in and share it on all of your social media stories. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit podcast, please just send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. And then per the usual, I will leave you all with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time, until next time, I'll catch you guys later.